Hey Glam fam, welcome back to my channel. Today I did a contour and highlight routine video. On this side I did cream and then I set it on top with powder, and on this side I just did powder. So I wanted to see if you guys could see a difference. I don't see any difference at all, but I used some affordable products and some high-end products so that I can give you guys a variation of what kind of products that you guys can use. Use whatever you're comfortable with, whatever you have in your collection. Don't let anybody tell you that you need a specific product or a specific brush to achieve a certain look. It's all about the technique you use to apply it. So yeah, if you guys want to see a foundation routine video aside from just contouring and highlighting, check out my last video before this one. I uploaded a flawless foundation routine video that you can incorporate with this highlight contour routine video. That's why I did it like that. So if you are struggling with applying foundation, watch that video first and then come back and watch this video so that you can learn how to contour and highlight on top of an already flawless foundation routine. So yeah, without further ado, let's just jump right into it. So I already have a thin layer of foundation on my face. I used the Luxie Beauty sponge and I took the Fenty Beauty foundation in the shade 300 and I applied a very thin layer onto my face already just to get things started. I'm going to be showing you guys two different ways that you can highlight and contour. One side I'm going to show you with cream and then setting it on top with powder, and the other side I'm going to show you guys with just powder, just to see if there's really a difference or not between cream contouring first and setting with powder versus just doing powder contour. Some people like to just do powder. I'm one of those people who wants to spend that extra like 5 minutes to apply cream when you can just go on top of it with powder. But if you're a beginner, I highly recommend using cream first, just because cream is easier to work with, because obviously if you make a mistake you can wipe it away, but then if you use a powder, since it's a dry formula, it's hard to correct a mistake and it's hard to blend out powder sometimes. Now typically when you're doing a cream contour and highlight, you don't have to apply foundation first, because when you blend all the cream products together you're kind of creating a base as well. But I always prefer to put a thin layer of foundation on just because it helps with the blending process, and also you need a medium shade in between the two colors that you're going to be using. The first one that I want to talk about is the LA Girl Pro Conceal. This is a super affordable product. You can get this from the drugstore. Yeah, so I have a light color and this one is in the shade Porcelain, so I would use this for highlighting, and then this one is in the shade Beautiful Bronze. Even though this is a really affordable product, it's very high definition and it photographs really nicely. So that's one option. And another option is just take your concealer. So I sometimes use the Tarte Shape Tape Concealer, and this is in a darker shade. It's just in the shade Mahogany. Similarly, you can use a foundation that's a few shades darker than you. Whatever products you're comfortable with using is what you should go ahead and use. In terms of the shade for the contour color, you want to go for something that's neutral or warm, because if you're going to set on top of it with a contour shade that's cooler, it's going to balance itself out anyway. So first let me just go in and apply this contour shade, and this is the side that I'm going to be doing the cream contour. So I'm just sloppily applying this right at the cheekbone and even a little bit upwards, because when I blend, I'm going to blend it upwards. And then I'm going to apply some to my jawline. Now obviously I'm showing you guys a very basic way of doing it. You have to customize this towards your own face shape. My face shape is more round, so I can get away with the 3. And the 3 typically does work for most face shapes. So with the 3, it just makes your face look more oval and long. And that's the look that I typically go for when I do contour. I'm going to apply a little bit to the temples. And then the side of my nose. Yeah, so this is the cream side, so I'm not going to do it on this side of my nose. And I don't think I've ever used this in the shade. I used to have a different shade. I feel like this might be a little bit too light for me. Yeah, it is super light, so I can't use this by itself. I need to go in with my skin tone first. So for that, I'm going to be taking the Too Faced Born This Way concealer. This is in the shade Natural Beige. And even though I said that I'm going to be doing cream on this side, I still need to conceal underneath here. And then I'm going to show you how I would further highlight it with powders later on. And at this stage, I'm just going to conceal the way I would in the areas of my face that I would need to with this product. So my chin, forehead, and I'll skip the bridge of my nose so that I can show you the LA Girl Pro Conceal product. I'm just gonna apply that now down the bridge of my nose. So see how light this is? Like I couldn't get away with using that on its own because it's too light for me. I feel like this is awkward, so I'm just gonna do my whole nose cream and powder. But you guys have seen me do like powder on my nose before. I'm not really a nose contour person. I don't like a very sculpted nose. I think it looks artificial. So I'm first gonna go ahead and start blending out the contour area because it's been sitting on my face for a while and I don't want it to set too much. And I'm just going in with my sponge and I'm using the butt of the sponge to do this. You can also use a brush for this, but I am just a sponge kind of girl. I just feel like I get more of a natural finish with the sponge. And now I'm flipping the side and I'm gonna blend out all the concealed areas. So it actually helps that I had on the foundation underneath because as you can see, it's really easy to blend these products out. And notice how I'm blending it all the way up here because I want this under eye area to look very lifted. But if you have mature skin, don't apply that much product in this area. It will make your skin look more aged because it's going to emphasize all the fine lines and stuff. So try to keep the product here minimum. And you guys know I like to set my eyelids with concealer, so I always take whatever's left on my sponge to my eyelids. I haven't done my brows yet, so I can be messy with it. And now I'm flipping back to that bronze side and I'm just kind of tapping over this area so there's like a gradient between the dark and the light. And we had forehead contour here, so I'm just flipping and going back in to really blend the two together. And now I'm going to my nose. I actually have a smaller sponge, also by Luxie Beauty. This one right here that I would use to blend it out, but it's not clean, so I'm just gonna stick to this one. And I'm blending this all the way into my forehead. And then for the cream contour side, my sponge has a flat end, so this is actually going to help me with the blending process. I'm just going to take the sides of it and kind of buff that area out. And if you need to, you can even use your finger. I'm actually just using my finger now because that sponge is too big for this. You don't want to overblend your nose if you want that sculpted look because then there was no point of you even putting any of the products on there to begin with. Okay, so to further highlight for this side, since this is the cream side, I'm going into my LA Girl Pro Conceal, and this is in a super light shade. When you're using a highlight shade, you want to use something that's 2 to 3 shades lighter than you. I like a more practical approach, so I just use my regular concealer to do highlighting, but a lot of people like to go in with something that's even lighter. So I'm applying this in stripes, basically right underneath that area all the way up to my cheekbone. And this is basically just going to help with the whole lifted look. Sometimes you can let your concealer set a little bit so that it stays in place and you're not absorbing most of the product with your sponge. But since I'm blending it right away, I'm going to get more of a natural finish rather than a very stark white finish underneath my eyes. And then with whatever's on my sponge, I'm going to take it and carve out this cheekbone area right here. There's so many different baking powders out there. There's yellow powders, pink powders, translucent powders. Find one that works best for your skin type. I'm going to show you guys today using the Morphe Brightening Pink Bake Set Powder. So this actually has a pink tone to it, which helps with the whole brightening effect. And it also helps lift up this cheek area right here. I've only ever used this Morphe powder once, so I want to see how it works with baking. I'm going to go ahead and bake both areas, and then I'm going to show you another way that you can further brighten underneath your eyes, because obviously with baking with a loose powder like this, even if it's pink or yellow, it's not going to offer you guys much coverage. And essentially what baking is, for those of you guys who don't know, is when you apply an excess amount of powder, leave it on your face for like 5 minutes or however long you want to really kind of bake that powder into your face so you get that nice porcelain, flawless, airbrush look, and your makeup won't move. It'll last for a very long time. I'm gonna pour some of the powder into the cap here. So So I'm just tapping out any creases that I would have before going in with that baking powder. I'm using this same damp sponge. You can also go with a brush, but I always like to first use the same damp sponge because the wetness from the sponge is really gonna melt that powder into my skin. And then on top of it, I usually go in with the brush again. So obviously you wanna apply like a shit ton of powder to your sponge. And I'm basically just setting all the areas that I concealed. And honestly, I have baked my entire face before, and that's a really good method too if you want your contour to even last a really long time, because keep in mind these powders, they are brightening, but they're also translucent typically. I actually don't recommend baking for mature skin just because, again, it's going to accentuate all those fine lines. And here I'm just kind of pinching the tip of my sponge to really get the middle of my nose. Or the bridge of my nose, whatever it's called. You guys, baking is a messy business. It's hard to talk and do this at the same time because I always swallow my powder. And now I'm gonna go underneath my contour line. So this is called reverse contouring. I haven't done anything to this side of my face yet, but you're gonna see that once I wipe this powder off, it'll look like I did do something just because I did this method. And then what I like to do here is I like to connect it from my under eye to this area so that it kind of lifts my cheek. And you guys, I don't know what your face shape is. If you have a different face shape than me, obviously do your research on what kind of method you need to use for highlight and contouring. I'm just showing you guys the basic 3 method, and the 3 method is just this. It's like doing it in a 3 shape, which can work for most people, but then it also doesn't necessarily have to work for everybody, so you have to do your own research on that. So at this stage, I'm gonna dust off all of this powder because I don't like to leave my baking powder on for that long. So I'm just taking my brush and I'm literally knocking off all of this powder that I just applied. And I'm now gonna set my eyelids with whatever powder is left on the sponge. I actually really like the finish I'm getting from this powder. It's not making me look yellow. Sometimes I feel like a lot of yellow baking powders can make you look like an Oompa Loompa. So see how this side of my face, I didn't do the cream contour, but I reverse contoured, and it kind of accentuated that shadow here naturally without me having to apply anything. And then this side is the side where I did apply that cream first, and it does look a little bit darker than the other side. Okay, so another way you can highlight is after going in with your baking powder, or if you don't even want to use baking powder, you can go in with a face powder that's lighter than your skin tone. So I'm going to go in with MAC Studio Fix in NC35, and I'm just going to further highlight underneath my eyes here. This is going to provide more coverage, and it's actually going to look more natural because I'm putting in a skin tone shade rather than something that's clear and almost translucent but has like a tint to it rather than actual coverage. And you guys will instantly see the difference of using a powder that's lighter than your skin tone on top of baking. I actually used to use this to bake. I would take my sponge and rub it into the powder and apply it like that, but it can feel a little bit too heavy when you do it like that. So that's why I think that this method is better. So I don't know if you can see much of a difference on camera, but this side looks a little bit more natural because it's in my skin tone versus this side. This side looks a little bit gray in this area and sunken in because of my bags, but this side, because I focused it more in my bags area, it looks brighter and it looks lifted. So you can do the same thing and apply it underneath your contour area, and it won't look as heavy because, again, it's a face powder. If you're doing this on yourself and you're doing it the way I am, where you're doing your face first and you haven't done your eyes yet, you can skip this step until after you do your eye makeup, because it'll also help with any like eyeshadow fallout that you have. Typically, that's what I would do. And by the way, all the powders that I'm showing you guys don't have any flashback. Okay, so now for powder contour, I have here the Kat Von D Shade and Light Contour Palette. This is a very good contour palette. I don't recommend this for beginners though, because it can be kind of intimidating and a little bit hard to blend. So for beginners, before you splurge on something that's obviously expensive and something that's as intimidating as this, you can go in with something like the LA Colors I Heart Makeup Contour Palette. I actually received this in a masterclass that I went to, the Dress Your Face masterclass. I actually fell in love with this product just because of how user-friendly it is. I like to use this on myself and on clients. I repurchased this twice since that class, which was in 2018, and I even bought this for my sister, and she's not really into makeup, but she contours with this, and it's more forgiving, especially because there's so many different shades in here. These two shades you can use for contouring. This is also a shade you can use for contouring, and if you're medium skin tone like me, you can use this as a skin tone shade. So if you go a little bit too heavy with contouring, you can always go back into that shade and kind of fix it up. So this is actually very easy to manipulate on your face. So this is kind of like baby steps into the high-end contour kit. So for contouring, I'm using this Morphe brush. This doesn't have a number on it, but I like brushes like this that are angled because it really helps me get into those zones. And also ignore this red eyeshadow that's like kind of stuck on the sides of the brushes. My brushes are so dirty. I need to clean them. First, I'm going to dip into this dark shade right here, and then I'm going to dip into that skin tone shade. So I'm kind of mixing the two so that I'm not going straight into that dark color first. And the way I'm holding my brush is the angle side is down. Obviously, if you're not using an angled brush, cater this towards the brush that you're using. But I find that using an angled brush for contouring, it does all the work for you, so you don't have to worry about it. And I'm dragging it upwards. You never want to drag down, because if you drag down, you're defeating the whole purpose of contouring. And I'm also not bringing it down to my mouth, because if you bring it down to your mouth, it's going to make you look older. So between my cheekbone and this line that I made, it should be in a gradient. It should go from light to medium to dark. If you want an even more seamless blend, you can go in with your skin tone powder. So I'm going to go back into that skin tone shade, and I'm going to use that to blend right in between that. So first, with whatever is left on this brush, I'm going to go into my forehead. And then again, I haven't picked up any new product yet, you guys. I'm using whatever's on my brush, and I'm getting my jawline here. And with this part, you have to be super careful because you can make it look like you're hairy rather than contoured on your jaw really quickly. So I also like to take it underneath my chin area to make my chin look more pronounced. And then since I'm already on this side, I'm going to drag it all the way to the other side of my jaw. And this is the side where I didn't put cream down, so now I have to be a little bit more careful with applying the powder, because keep in mind, when you put cream down first, you kind of give yourself a baseline to blend on top of. When you go straight into powder, it's harder for you to do that because you don't have a baseline. So I feel like this color right here is too drastically different than the color up there. I'm gonna kind of put a film of this bronze color right underneath it so it doesn't look too crazy. Alright, so now I'm going into the powder side, and I'm going to do the same exact thing. But first, I'm going to go in with my skin tone shade, because this area hasn't been set with anything. I didn't even put baking powder there. So if I go straight in with a dark color without having set this area first, it's going to be very hard to blend. And obviously, if you don't have this palette, just use your regular face powder. Like if I didn't have this palette, and if I was using the Kat Von D palette, because the Kat Von D palette doesn't have a shade that's close to my skin tone, I would then go into my MAC Studio Fix in NC40 rather than the NC35 that I applied underneath my eyes. So that would be my medium shade, and I would apply that to this area first before going into the contour shade, if that makes sense. Now I'm going into that dark shade, and then I'm applying it. And see how easy it is to blend now because I put down that skin tone shade first. And I have to really build up to match the other side. And then this area right here, I'm taking it up to my temples. And make sure you always get into your hairline because you don't want to see the difference in shade. And now to further intensify my contour, I would actually stop right here. But just to show you guys the Kat Von D Shade and Light Contour Kit, I'm going to go into that dark shade, like the darkest shade right there. That's what I would use if I would want to make my contour look really strong. I'm just going to dab a little bit onto my brush, not too much because I don't want this to look insane. So see, I literally just touched it once and that's how much color payoff I got. So I'm just going to kind of dust off whatever I can from the brush. And now I'm going to further blend upwards. Another thing that I like to do is, say I wasn't using this palette first and I just went straight into the Kat Von D palette, which I do sometimes, I would dip into the dark color and then I would mix it with my face powder and kind of create a medium shade and then go ahead and apply it. And then with whatever is left on the brush, I'm just going to go into the other side now. And then before I further blend the rest of my face, I'm just going to do my nose contour. I'm using a small flat brush like this. This is also by Morphe and it also doesn't have a number on it. I'm sorry you guys, all my Morphe brushes, they either chip off or they don't have a number because they came in a set. But it doesn't matter, you can use whatever brush you're comfortable with. So I'm going to dip into this medium shade right here for my nose contour. And I know this is going to go on too strong. I'm going to mix it into my face powder shade, dust off the excess, and then go into setting my nose contour. So then when I get to the tip right here, I'm just going to connect it underneath. You know, another reason why I can't do nose contour is because I wipe my nose so much that I would just end up wiping it all off. And then sometimes I've seen people do that button trick where you kind of make a line right at the tip to give you a button nose. So I'm just gonna do that too. But I'm taking my nose contour into my crease. So for my eyeshadow look later on, it has something to blend into. It doesn't just go into two straight lines going down my nose. I think that's it for nose contour. Now I'm just gonna carve it out. This step is the most important for your nose contour. So I'm taking the Morphe E47 brush. You guys have seen me use this brush before. I use this to clean up my eyeshadow sometimes. So I'm gonna use this and dip into the banana shade right here from the Kat Von D Shade and Light Contour Kit. I'm just gonna go ahead and carve out the nose contour. This step is really important when you're doing a nose contour. If you were to just stop without carving out your nose contour, your nose could actually look wider. And then I'm gonna get the bridge of my nose too with this same shade. And then what you can do is just leave all these powders on and then come back and kind of blend them all together at the end. I don't like doing that because again, I'm not really into the nose contour look, so I'm just gonna go ahead and take my brush and blend it out right away. So what this is gonna do, it's gonna give it a softer look. And you don't wanna like rub, I'm literally just tapping at it. I know it probably doesn't look like I'm doing that, but it is. And I'm kind of blending it upwards into those dark lines. And that's it. You could leave it like this, but I feel like it looks a little bit too strong for me. So I'm just gonna go back into my face powder. I'm just gonna go on top of some of these lines here, just to further blend them into my nose, because I don't like when I turn to the side and I see the really dark contour line. Now you might be wondering, if you don't like those lines, then why did you carve out your nose contour? You still have to carve out your nose contour because if you don't, it's gonna make your nose look wider rather than slimmer. Okay, so now for the contour, I'm still not done with the contour. So you see how in certain areas it goes from light to dark? I don't like that, so with whatever is on this brush, I'm just gonna use that to kind of create a medium tone between the dark and the light, so I get a really nice seamless blend and it's not unrealistic looking. And then that's about it for the contour portion. I'm going to do the rest of my makeup and then I'm going to come back and show you guys the highlight portion at the end. Alright you guys, I'm back. I did the rest of my makeup, I had dinner, and then I actually filmed a 2-in-1. I just filmed my eyebrow routine, so be sure to check that out once I post that. So let's just finish up with the face. I did my blush already. You guys, blush is pretty self-explanatory, but I'll just go ahead and show you guys. So I took my Milani blush in the shade Blossom Time Rose and this brush by Morphe, which I'm sorry, again, doesn't have a number. So I put some blush onto the brush, I dusted it off, and then I kind of just tapped it into the apples of my cheeks. And since my contour is already so heavy and strong, it's kind of working as a guide to make sure that I don't bring my blush down underneath. I'm keeping it up top to give me that really lifted effect. And this blush is a dupe for NARS Orgasm, by the way, so if you guys have never used NARS Orgasm and don't want to splurge on it, definitely try the Milani blushes. They have like a really nice glow to them that's not glittery but gives you that nice healthy glow. Alright, for highlight, take your favorite highlighter. Today I'm going to be using the Farsali Jelly Beam highlighter, and this is in the shade Glazed. So it's basically just a jelly highlighter. It literally looks like silly putty, you guys, and it dries to a powder formula, so I'm just going to go in with this. This is definitely not beginner friendly, and it is kind of liquidy. The best way to apply this is with your finger. So I'm just going to go in with my middle finger and just kind of dab it into the areas where I want my highlight to be. So I'm literally hitting my cheekbone, exactly where my cheekbone is. And I'm using this kind of as a base because I'm going to apply a highlight on top of it as well. But playtime with this is very limited because it sets very fast. And that's why I'm using my finger, because the warmth of my finger is going to really help it melt into my skin. So now I'm going to go on top of this, and I'm using the Laura Geller Gilded Honey highlighter. This is one of my favorite highlighters of all time. Don't judge it. It fell and broke, and that's why it looks like this. And I'm also taking my favorite highlight brush, which is the Morphe M438 brush. You've seen me use this for highlighter so many times in my videos. And I'm going on top of that base that I just applied. So this is also similar to that 3 shape. So this is a C shape that I'm basically doing on the side of my face. And that's usually the general rule of thumb when applying your highlighter. You don't want it to go low because it's going to make you look oily. And then right here, where it kind of gets awkward, you don't know what to do with it, what I like to do is I just softly go over my blush almost, just so that it doesn't end abruptly and it looks even. And then I'm even connecting this a little bit to my brow bone and then down the bridge of my nose. And if you want that cute button nose type of look, you just take your finger and kind of dab it right at the center. And then same thing for Cupid's bow, I'm using my finger. And be careful with your Cupid's bow because it can look like your upper lip is sweaty if you apply too much. And I think that's it for highlighter. So never leave your highlighter like this. Always go back with either your bronzer brush, your powder brush, or your blush brush and kind of go over the edge. And then finally, this is something new that I've been doing. I'm taking the Aquaphor body spray. I'm going to spray some onto my sponge. And then to really get that really wet highlight look, I'm going to kind of dab on top of the highlighter with this. And then I'm even going back on top of it with whatever's left on this brush, just to really lock it into place and make it look like I'm lit from within. Gotta get that goddess glow. And then finally, I'm just going in with my setting spray. I'm taking the Farsali Rose Gold Skin Mist, which is, I know, on its deathbed. I'm just spraying my face. And that's it, you guys. That is how I highlight and contour. This is the side where I did cream first and then powder on top, and this is the side where I did just powder. I don't know if you guys can tell a difference. I feel like they both look the same to me. It's probably also because of the products that I used. This is just the powder side. So as you can see that I still got the finish that I was looking for with just powder, but you can still get the same kind of finish with cream as well. And cream contouring is more beginner friendly because you can wipe away the mistakes and it's easier to blend. So make sure you try that out first if you're a beginner and you've never done contouring before. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys learned something from it. Don't forget to watch my last few videos, and I'll see you guys in my next one. Bye!